You know what some people say about fuel-efficient vehicles? Forget about it. That's this week on Motoring 2001.
TSN's Motoring 2001 is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them. And Midas. Keep a good thing going. Go Midas.
This week we're in the live country music capital of North America, and we're not talking Nashville. We're talking Branson, Missouri. And every country entertainer of yesterday and today has set up shop here over the past few years. Now, you know, when you're talking motoring, most country folk drive pickup trucks. Well, if the truth be known, RVs are found everywhere here in Branson, as this town has become a major tourist attraction. Nevertheless, pickup trucks are still the #1 selling vehicle in North America and a huge profit center for car manufacturers. To give you an idea how big they are, take General Motors. This is a company that's been around for almost 100 years, and they have invited auto journalists from North America and Europe here to Branson to check out their new heavy-duty, full-size pickup lineup for the year 2001. And they're calling this the most important launch in the company's history.
Full-size trucks provide the greatest profit to the corporation as a single platform. So you've heard the old saying, you know, as General Motors goes, so goes the country. As full-size trucks go, so goes the truck group, and so goes General Motors. So that's why it's so important to us.
This launch represents sort of a phase 3 of our GMT 800, our new pickup launch. Phase 1 back in '99 with the half-ton pickups, then last year with the utilities, Suburbans and Yukons. Now this wraps it up into the heavy-duty field. Ford has definitely been stronger in this market just due to the product that they've got now, that with the new Duramax diesel and the hardware that we've got here in the heavy-duty. It's our turn now to take over that market.
The things that are being introduced here today with the Duramax diesel and the Allison transmission are probably going to shoot another shot over the competition of Ford and Dodge. It's bound to stir the market up some more. My estimation is that the truck business is even going to grow. It's not even going to level off. We see it in the SUV thing. People said that was dead a couple of years ago. There's no sign of that happening.
Trucks are turned into Cadillacs instead of trucks anymore. They're too fancy. I mean, you don't spend $45,000 on a truck to run out here.
What's the reality out here for a truck then?
Rubber mats, crank windows, and an air conditioner's a necessity. But other than that, you don't need anything besides a heater.
So is it tough for you to find a pickup truck now for what they were built for, this kind of industry?
It's almost impossible.
It is.
Yeah.
You got to take what options, or is it just?
Yeah. But you want a special order, and then a lot of people don't even want to fool with you on it.
You got a favorite truck?
No, whichever one's cheapest.
We've got trucks for him, but to be perfectly frank, a lot of our business is in an up-level truck. It's in an extended cab. It's in a four-wheel drive. That's what many customers in Canada want, and that's what we're building for. But tell them to come and see us. We've got a lower-priced truck for him too.
There are going to be people that are going to buy trucks if they don't need them. They're still going to buy them because they like the idea of being a trucker. Trucks, in many cases, are the new sports cars. They're just bigger and fatter and more fun in a lot of ways.
Full-size truck platform for General Motors is in excess of 2 million units. We are planning to be able to manufacture and have capacity to manufacture about 1,700,000 units. So that really says we're not only going to have the truck that's got the right attributes to be the leader, but we've also got the production capacity to be the leader.
Trucks are a huge market in Canada. The industry sells about 190, 200,000 trucks in Canada, 30% of which are diesel. So it's a huge potential market.
Can you drive one of these trucks and complain about the high price of gas?
If you're complaining about the high price of gas, stay home, because there's just no way around it. We're all slaves to the oil industry, and sooner or later you're going to pay the price or you're going to stay home. And I don't think people are going to stay home.
Anything you'd like to say to Ford and Dodge at this moment?
Yep. Keep the competition coming, because it makes us all better, and it's nice looking at you in our rear view mirror.
You know, driving in some cars, I might as well have my glasses off because I just can't see a thing. That's coming up later on Kenzie's Corner.
You know, it was way back in 1973 that Honda launched the very first Civic. Since then, there have been 6 generations, each one getting successively better. On this edition of Test Drive, we look at number 7. Underneath the new Civic is a McPherson strut design up front and new double wishbones in back. Both were designed to be compact, minimising the intrusion into the usable space. Now, it becomes very obvious on the skid pad that the new car was designed with the emphasis on ride comfort. While body roll and understeer are well within acceptable limits, they are more obvious than before. On the upside, the highway ride is better than anything in this class. Both conditions, aside from the softer settings of course, can be attributed to the taller tyres. These absorb the sharp bumps better but tend to roll over when pushed. The variable power assist steering brings a nice linear feel with very prompt response. Great brakes and a decent pedal, but that squeal right there tells you there's no anti-lock brakes on this base Civic. And here I thought this was supposed to be a better car. Powering the new Civic is a larger 1.7-litre single overhead cam 4 that's good for 115 horses and 110 pounds-feet of torque at 4,500 RPM. Now, they're not great numbers on paper, but when paired with the 5-speed manual transmission, the reality is that it is more than enough. Performance through the first 3 gears is spirited, while 4th gives good merging speed, and 5th, well, it's a relaxed cruiser. Typical of all Honda boxes, this one is smooth. In developing the 7th generation Civic, Honda put a clear emphasis on packaging. Take, for instance, the trunk. It's enormous and benefits from 70/30 split folding rear seats. The vehicle itself is actually about 15 millimeters shorter than the car it replaces. However, as it stands taller, the result is abundant headroom. You also get very generous knee room and plenty of space to put your toes underneath the front seat. In short, this thing is a decided cut above average for this class of car. The Civic is tastefully attired, if a little bland. The dual dials are attractive, but the lack of a tachometer on the base car is an oversight, especially if you go with the manual box. However, the radio and climate controls are logically arranged and well within your usual line of sight. A couple of other minor pet peeves up front. First of all, the black on black on black presentation, well, it makes the bland design look even worse. The other thing, whenever you select either of the 2 defrost modes, the AC is automatically turned on. However, when you flip it back to warm your feet, the air conditioner stays on. As a result, in winter, you're going to be burning gas to cool the air only to have it warmed by the heater. If they can turn it on automatically, why can't they turn it off automatically? On the safety front, you get his and hers front airbags, a stiffer body structure, and 3-point belts in all positions. You know, the 7th generation Civic is without question the best to date. Its packaging is very intelligent, the engine is very flexible, and the suspension very comfortable. However, in narrow casting it so closely towards the family, they've lost some of the impish character that was the hallmark of previous Civics. That and the fact there's no more hatchback is a little disappointing.
Jim, tell us what's going on here.
Okay, today we're demonstrating the advantages of the General Motors rear locking differential. We have some competitors who have a limited slip rear differential, and as you can see, when that rear wheel comes up off the ground, it spins, and the momentum there is carrying him through. But typically on this last one, that wheel goes up and he stopped. Now we're demonstrating four-wheel drive vehicles here today because we can get out of this this course eventually. But for a real-world situation, such as being on a boat ramp or on a low coefficient surface like snow or ice, the rear locking differential will lock and transfer the torque to the other wheel. So as you see here on the GMC Sierra, you'll see the wheel start to spin and the torque is transferred to the left rear wheel there. And you can see as they progress through, again, that wheel will spin, torque is transferred to the other wheel.
Now will he make it through this big one?
He should make it through. And as you can see, again, the wheel spins, torque is transferred, and it's through.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns rust inhibitors. Now, while today's vehicles are more rust resistant than they ever have been thanks to the increasing use of galvanized materials in the body, rust is still a fact of life. If you operate in the Maritimes, Ontario, or Quebec, you know what I'm talking about. The ravages of road salt can quickly destroy a beautiful vehicle. So if you plan to keep your vehicle for a number of years, it's money well spent to have rust inhibitor professionally applied. Usually $80 to $140 per vehicle, depending on the type and size of vehicle. And most of these sprays, if they're the most effective type, the oil type sprays, it's recommended to apply them annually. In many cases, you'll find that today's vehicles don't require a lot of winter preparation, but rust inhibitor is money well spent on many of today's vehicles. The lower extremities of the doors are usually the first areas to show the ravages of rust, and by the time it raises its ugly head, so to speak, it's too late in many cases to fix it properly. You never catch up to it. So get it on there before it shows signs of rust annually. It's money well spent. And remember, rust never sleeps. That's your Midas tip of the week.
What you've been experiencing is four-wheel steer on our light-duty trucks. It's a product that we're going to come out with in the 2002 model year. And what it does is it changes the vehicle from feeling like a large vehicle. It improves the maneuverability in a parking lot situation. It improves your handling with the trailer and maneuverability with the trailer. It improves snow and ice handling. And if you go off-roading the system, it's great off-roading because you're able to make tight maneuvers and go around obstacles when you're off-roading.
When you come to these things, I mean, you get the free hotel room and the great meals and the entertainment, the rest of that. So you don't like to be wowed because then people just think you're being bought off. But this four-wheel steering system actually did wow me, as much as I'm loath to admit it as a jaded Canadian journalist. When it's engaged, you can pull into a parking spot as though you were a Honda Civic. And the big change is when they take it off and you're in two-wheel steering and you have to do a three-point turn to get into the same spot you just whisked into. So it's very impressive, and not sure why no one's done it before.
We've been out asking people what they think about it, and to tell you the truth, we've never found an option that has shown to be as popular with the people when we show them some early technologies. And I believe it's going to be, personally believe it's going to be as big as four-wheel drive.
Well, obviously General Motors is convinced that the four-wheel steering will be a hit. In fact, they will make it available in a future GM vehicle. We're not sure which one, but you can bet it will be in the showrooms by the year 2002. All right, let's head to the garage and join Bill Gardiner.
Well, Brad, I think it'll be quite a while before most of us actually get our hands on one of those four-wheel steer pickup trucks. For me, it'll probably be 2 or 3 decades. And in the interim, if you haven't already discovered it, on a long wheelbase vehicle like that, if you're trying to negotiate a tight parking situation, the thing to do is back it in. If you've got good mirrors and you check closely before you approach that spot, it's always easier to back in. In any case, this week we're going to answer an email from one of our viewers in Sydney, British Columbia. Initial G, Blood, in Sydney, BC. He says, perhaps on a show in the future you could discuss the frequency of changing manual transmission lubricant and differential lubricant. I've discussed this with several mechanics who have greatly differing opinions. His own personal vehicle is a GMC pickup with a 5-speed manual transmission. Now, in most cases, you'll find recommendations in the owner's manual of your vehicle as to when to change these fluids. But if you don't, a good yardstick or a good interval to use is approximately 80,000 kilometers. Now, that's under ideal operating conditions. In other words, no contamination or no circumstances like driving in mountainous terrain or towing a heavy vehicle or maybe snow plowing, something like this. If you've got a vehicle used for any one of those operations like trailer towing or plowing, you might want to think about changing those fluids on a more frequent basis. Even yearly would not be overdoing it. Now, one thing you want to also keep in mind, I'm sure you've all seen on the 11 o'clock news vehicles driving under a flooded underpass or through standing water that's over top of the tires. Anytime a vehicle goes through deep water like that, one of the first things you want to be thinking about, if you haven't already thought about it, is getting the transmission and axle lubricants checked for contamination, because if any water infiltrates either one of those assemblies, it can dramatically shorten the life of that assembly or ruin it in short order. So you want to get that vehicle into a mechanic who would recognize the look of contaminated fluid. There's a specific look to it. It gets a milky or cloudy look, so you've got to recognize the difference between normal and bad fluid. Make sure that you get it checked, though. It's very important. And no matter when you had it changed last, if it gets contaminated with water, it's got to come out of there immediately. Now, another thing to keep in mind, if you're changing manual transmission fluid, there's different fluids that can be in there depending on whether it's a light-duty car, pickup, or heavy-duty pickup. It could be anything from motor oil in some front-wheel drive cars to automatic transmission fluid to 80W90 gear oil. So make sure that you get the appropriate fluid regardless of what came out of there or what it looked like when it came out. You've got to make sure you're getting the right stuff back in there. With axles, it's usually 80W90 gear oil going in an axle, and make sure that when you're changing these fluids, you explore the option of changing to synthetic lubricants. There's a big advantage to be had in the Canadian climate by switching to synthetics. You'll gain fuel economy, drivability, and you'll also get a freer running or easier shifting vehicle in sub-zero temperatures. If you're already due to change those lubricants, a little bit of extra coin spent on synthetics is well spent. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardiner for Motoring 2001.
Well, I think they're going to do very well. I don't think they're going to hurt Ford particularly in this market, because they do own that market in the U.S. especially. But they will make a significant dent, and it gives also an opportunity for those who love the import brands for specific reasons. It gives them an opportunity to buy an import and have the size of vehicle that they need for the job that they need.
I had dinner the other night with Peter Horbury, who's the chief designer of Volvo Car Corporation. We got talking about visibility, and I reminded him of the old BMW 2002 I used to drive. That car had very narrow roof pillars and no rear seat headrests, and was such a delight to drive a car that you could actually see out of. Now, Peter said, yeah, but those things were death traps. We can't build cars like that anymore. I mean, the BMW is no worse than any other, but there's been great progress been made in crash safety over the years, and the government requires car makers to build cars with big, thick pillars like this one has. And that forest of headrests you see through there, well, they're part of the deal too. But heck, you can hardly see my Hornet through all that. And that's really the point. I mean, isn't visibility a safety issue as well? Take rear seat headrests, for example. Now, the only time they're effective is A, if you have a crash of the right degree of severity where a headrest can do any good, and B, there's actually somebody sitting back there, which most of the time there isn't. As far as big, thick roof pillars are concerned, they only come into play if the vehicle flips over, and that too is a very rare occurrence. But every single drive requires a driver who needs to see where he's going all the time. It's the old argument between passive safety, which means protecting the occupants in the event of a crash, and active safety, which means trying to avoid the crash in the first place. Now, any sane analysis would put the emphasis on active safety, But those factors are much harder to quantify, so it's harder for car makers to follow rules that governments can write on those issues. Now, there are some solutions. Some up-level cars have headrests in the back that automatically disappear into the seat if there's nobody sitting there. It's expensive, but it works. Some car makers design these pillars so they're triangular in shape, makes them easier to see through. But it's also incumbent upon you to take these factors into account. When you're checking out a new car, make sure you can see everything around you. For my money, that's much more important than one extra rear seat headrest. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, as we've seen this week, General Motors is all set now to take on Ford in the heavy-duty pickup truck segment. And on a later program, Graham will take a closer look at one of the trucks on test drive. But before we go, as you know, here on Motoring, we cover anything on wheels. But we thought we'd end the show this week with something just a little different. It's called a fountain boat. Price tag $178,000 American.
Well, this particular model is equipped with a pair of our base marine Vortec 8100 engines, which is currently starting production in our Tonawanda engine plant in Buffalo, New York, and will be available to ship to our OEM customers beginning July 17th of this year. The engines are 375 horsepower at 4,600 RPM. Top speed of the boat at this point is about 74 miles an hour, but with some different prop selections, we can probably get it pushing 80 miles an hour, and it's a lot of fun to drive.
But you know, other than the General Motor heavy-duty pickup trucks, this is the only boat you're going to find these twin 8100s in. But I get the feeling it'll only be a matter of time before they'll be made available to the general public. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them. Hit it, Terry.
TSN's Motoring 2001 has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them. And Midas. Keep a good thing going. Go Midas.